My family forged my signature, dragged loan sharks into my life, and tried to blame me for everything. But instead of rolling over, I flipped the script and watched their whole house of lies burn down piece by piece. Hey Reddit, so I never thought I'd end up posting something like this. But the last year of my life has been pure chaos thanks to my family pulling some of the dumbest, most backstabbing stunts I've ever seen. I'm talking forged papers, loan sharks, and betrayal that makes you question if blood really means anything. I finally decided to put it all out here because honestly, it still feels unreal that this even happened. Kevin, 32 male, the older brother. And if you've ever grown up in a family where one kid gets handed everything while the other has to work for every little thing, you'll know exactly how this story goes. My parents had two kids, me and my younger brother Eric, 28 male. From day one, it was obvious who the favorite was. Eric could basically trip over his own feet, and mom would say he was unique. I could win an award, and dad would shrug like it was the bare minimum. When I was a kid, I thought that's just how families worked. Older siblings had to carry the load, right? But the older I got, the clearer it became. No, it wasn't just birth order. They actually believed Eric was some chosen one, and I was just the mule. Once I hit high school, I started picking up extra shifts wherever I could. Part-time construction, retail, whatever. I wanted money in my pocket. Meanwhile, Eric was living like some suburban prince. Parents covered everything. When I brought this up once, Dad said, "You should be proud that you're independent. You're stronger than him." Like it was some compliment. Spoiler, it wasn't. Fast forward to college. I worked construction during the summers, got into project management after graduation, and slowly built a stable career. I rent my own place, I've got a small savings account, no big debts, and I know how to manage my bills. Nothing flashy, but it's mine and I earned it. Eric? Yeah. Let's just say responsibility is not in his dictionary. The guy has never held a job longer than 6 months. He's tried retail, restaurants, even this one time he swore he was going to get rich off crypto trading. All it meant was him burning through cash that wasn't his. And trust me, my parents were always happy to reload his wallet. Dad calls him a dreamer. Mom says he just needs the right opportunity. Translation, he can screw up endlessly and they'll call it potential. Me? I got labeled the reliable one, the Rock. Dad's favorite saying to me was, "A real man steps up for his family." Guess who that lecture was never given to? Exactly. It wasn't just talk either. Over the years, they hit me up constantly for money. Eric fell behind on rent. You're doing well. It wouldn't hurt you to cover it. I told them no every single time. Why would I? I worked for what I had, and I wasn't going to keep funding a grown man who'd never even tried to take care of himself. And I know how Reddit works. Some of you are already typing, "Why didn't you just say no and cut them off?" But I did. Every single time. I wasn't rude about it, but I shut it down. My parents acted shocked like I'd spit on the family name. But seriously, why would I be the one paying? Eric had two working arms and legs. He wasn't disabled. He just didn't want to work. Even family dinners became a minefield. If I casually mentioned getting a raise, they'd immediately steer the conversation to Eric and his new business ideas. If I said I was saving for a down payment, Mom would sigh dramatically about how Eric just needs a little help to get on his feet. I could have said I won the lottery, and they'd still bring it back to, "Well, your brother could use a hand." And here's the thing. I still thought maybe, deep down, they'd come around. I told myself, just keep grinding. Keep proving yourself. They'll eventually see the difference. Maybe one day they'd realize I wasn't selfish for keeping what I earned. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than just the backup plan for their golden boy. But they never did. To them, Eric was always destined for greatness, even though he had no work ethic to back it up. And me? I was just the guy who they thought should pick up the slack whenever their chosen one messed up. At the time, I didn't know how far they'd take it. I thought saying no enough times would eventually teach them I wasn't their safety net. Looking back now, all the warning signs were there. I just didn't realize how insane things were about to get. It started with one of those so-called family dinners. And I use that term loosely, because in normal households, family dinner means good food, catching up, maybe even enjoying each other's company. In my house, it meant walking into a carefully staged guilt trap disguised as a meal. I should have known something was up the second I walked in. Mom had made Eric's favorite dish, not mine. Dad was sitting at the head of the table like some CEO about to deliver a big announcement. And Eric? He was leaned back with his phone in hand, grinning like he'd just discovered gold. I sat down, and before I even got a bite of food, Mom said, "Your brother's been working on something big." That's her way of saying, "Get your checkbook ready." Eric put his phone down dramatically, like he was about to present to investors. I swear he almost pulled out a laser pointer. Dad chimed in like he was Eric's hype man. We think it's time you helped your brother. He's got a business idea, and with your support, it could really take off. I sat there with my fork in hand and just stared at them. Let me guess, I said. He needs money. And instead of going to, I don't know, a bank like everyone else, you've decided the easiest target is me. Did I get that in one try, or do I need to let him show me his fake PowerPoint slides? Eric smirked like he'd been waiting for me to say that. You don't get it. This is different. I've got contacts this time. Real backers. I just need a little seed money to get it going. I laughed. Like actual out loud laughed. Seed money? Bro, the only thing you've planted in your life is your ass on Mom's couch. Mom shot me her patented disappointed look. You know the one where she lowers her head slightly but still looks up at you, like she's channeling a sad puppy. You're being unfair. He's trying to build something. Family supports family. I dropped my fork and leaned in. Unfair? Okay, let's talk about unfair. When I was busting my back hauling bricks on construction sites to pay off student loans, where was this family support? When I was eating $2 instant noodles 5 nights a week, where was my family investment? Oh, right. You were too busy paying for Eric to go to his 3rd college that he also dropped out of? Forgive me if I'm not lining up to throw money into Eric's latest black hole. Dad slammed his fist lightly on the table, silverware rattling. Watch your tone. You're doing well now. You can afford to help. Yeah, I can afford to help myself. Crazy concept, right? Taking care of the guy who actually gets up and goes to work every single day instead of the one who thinks getting out of bed before noon is a human rights violation. Eric puffed his chest like a kid who'd just been told off at recess. You'll regret not being part of this when I make it big. Don't come crawling to me when I'm successful. I leaned back, folded my arms, and smiled. Eric, the only thing you've ever made big is overdraft fees. If you really believe in this, go to a bank. Oh wait, banks like people with jobs and credit. Guess that's why you're stuck begging at the family table. His face went red. Mom gasped like I'd just cursed in church, and Dad looked like he was going to pop a vein. Why do you always tear him down? Mom said, raising her voice. He just needs a chance. You had chances. Oh yeah? What chances? Working construction in the heat, juggling 2 jobs through college, getting $0 from you while you threw cash at Eric's every dumb idea? If that's what you call chances, then sure. I guess I had them. The silence that followed was thick. Dad muttered something under his breath about responsibility. Eric sulked in his chair like I'd just canceled his birthday. And me? I calmly took another bite of food and said, next time you want to run a scam, at least have the decency to not bait me with dinner first. I didn't stick around for dessert. Honestly, I was done. For once, I didn't just say no. I burned their little stage production to the ground. Walking out of that house, I felt lighter than I had in years. But what I didn't know was that this was just the warm-up act. They weren't going to take my refusal and move on. Nope. They were about to cross a line I didn't even think they were capable of. A couple days after that dinner, I started getting junk mail from some no-name finance companies. Welcome packets, repayment schedules, even one envelope stamped urgent. That's when I realized my info wasn't just floating around online. Someone had actually filed loan paperwork in my name. I didn't connect the dots at first. I just tossed most of it in the trash, muttering about scammers scraping my info online. Turns out that was the first warning sign. I just didn't realize how insane things were about to get. It happened on a Thursday, middle of the workday. I was in my office finishing up some reports when reception buzzed me. She sounded weird, kind of nervous. There are 2 guys here asking for you. They say it's about finances, not clients, not coworkers. The way she said finances had that this isn't normal tone. I went down to the lobby and immediately clocked them. 2 dudes in cheap suits, the kind that looked like they were ironed by running them through a dryer with rocks. One had a scar across his eyebrow. The other was chewing gum like it owed him money. They weren't bankers. They weren't even debt collectors. These were loan shark types. Scarface smirked when he saw me. You're Kevin, right? We need to talk about your balance. Balance? I repeated. What balance? Gum Guy pulled a folder from his coat and flipped it open. My name. My address. I felt my stomach drop. Your signature's on a guarantee for $50,000. When the kid misses, the guarantor pays. You're late. I laughed because it felt like a prank. You've got the wrong guy. I never borrowed a dime from you, and I sure as hell didn't co-sign anything. Scarface stepped closer, close enough I could smell his cheap aftershave. Funny, because paperwork says otherwise. Doesn't matter if you spent it or not, your name's on it. You pay. Reception was watching from behind the desk, wide-eyed. I kept it calm. We're not doing this here. Leave me your card and I'll check with my lawyer. Then I quietly waved over building security and had them escorted out. No shouting match, no scene, just a clear paper trail that I wasn't part of their nonsense. Scarface leaned in. Lawyers don't pay bills. Money does. We'll be in touch. They walked out like they owned the place, leaving me standing there with my pulse pounding. The second they were gone, I grabbed my phone and called my parents. Dad answered. What the hell did you do? I snapped. Silence. Then a too calm voice. I assume you've spoken to some of Eric's contacts. Contacts. That's what he called them. Loan sharks. They showed up at my job. With paperwork. In my name. How the hell do they have my info? Dad sighed like I was the problem. Because we gave it to them. They wouldn't approve Eric otherwise. He needed a backer, and you wouldn't step up. They slapped my name in as the co-signer, the guarantor, not the borrower. Same difference to sharks when a payment's late, but legally it matters. I swear, my vision blurred. You what? Mom grabbed the phone. Don't be so dramatic. It's family. We knew you'd never let Eric sink. You pushed us to do this. If you gave us money in the first place, none of this would have happened. That line hit me like a hammer. They weren't even denying it. They actually believed this was my fault. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You forged me into a $50,000 loan, and your excuse is that I didn't give him handouts fast enough? Eric's voice piped up in the background. Relax, man. It's an investment. I'll flip it. You'll get your money back. I lost it. Flip it? You're not flipping anything except burgers if you ever get off your ass. You just dragged me into debt with guys who don't exactly send polite reminders in the mail? Do you get how serious this is? Dad cut in, sharp. Lower your voice. The deal's done. Stop whining and just make the payments. You make good money. You'll barely feel it. This is about family loyalty. I was shaking, pacing my office like a caged animal. Family loyalty? You literally sold me out to thugs. Do you even hear yourselves? Mom's voice turned icy. If you walk away from this, don't expect to be part of this family anymore. We did this for Eric's future. I hung up before I said something that would scorch the earth. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the phone. That night, they doubled down. Mom showed up at my apartment, banging on the door like the building was on fire. When I opened it, she pushed past me and started in. You're blowing this out of proportion. Stop acting like a victim. You're stable. You can handle it. Eric just needs time. I laughed in her face. Handle it? You forged me into debt with criminals. That's not family helping family. That's fraud. That's a felony. Her lips tightened. Big words. You really think you'd send your own parents to jail? That's disgusting. Disgusting is you selling out your own kid because you're too spineless to tell Eric no. Disgusting is blaming me for not throwing away my paycheck when I worked for everything I have and he hasn't lifted a finger in years. She started crying, the crocodile kind, loud and theatrical. We only did this because we knew you'd never let your brother down. You're right about one thing, I said, opening the door. I'm not letting him down. I'm letting him face the consequences. She stormed out, muttering about betrayal. I locked the door and sat down on the couch, heart racing. This wasn't some family spat anymore. This was real. Loan sharks didn't play nice. My parents had crossed a line, and now my name was on the chopping block. And the worst part? I knew those guys weren't done with me. I didn't even get 48 hours before they circled back. Saturday night, around 11 p.m., there was a loud knock at my apartment door. Not a neighbor's polite tap. This was the kind of knock that says, open up or we'll open it for you. I looked through the peephole. Same suits, Scarface and Gum Guy. They weren't hiding. Scarface even looked straight at the door, like he knew I was watching. Clock's ticking, Kevin, he called through the door. You don't want us to come back tomorrow. I didn't answer. Not stupid enough to start a midnight screaming match. They hung around for maybe 5 minutes, then walked off. 5 minutes where my heart pounded so hard I thought the neighbors could hear it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, scrolling through the same thought over and over. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is criminal. So I made my move. The next morning, I dialed the non-emergency police line. When the operator asked my issue, I told her flat out, identity theft and harassment. My family forged my name into a loan with loan sharks. By the next afternoon, 2 officers were at my door. One older, one younger. They didn't treat me like a joke, which was a relief. I showed them the weird mail I'd been getting, the notes I'd written down from the shark encounters, And most importantly, the paperwork Scarface had flashed in the lobby that first day. The copy my mother had shoved at me when she showed up screaming still had my signature on it, except I never signed anything. The younger officer whistled. Yeah, that's a forgery. Obvious. They forged the guarantor line. You're listed as co-signer, not primary, the older one added. The older one nodded. This isn't a civil squabble, son. This is fraud. You need to file an official report. We'll also recommend you put a freeze on your credit immediately. I felt this weird mix of rage and relief. Rage that my own parents had put me in this position. Relief that it wasn't just me saying, this is insane anymore. The cops were calling it criminal. I filled out the paperwork right there at my dining table. Every detail, every date, every conversation. When it was done, the older cop tucked it into a folder and said, "We'll be speaking with your family. Just so you know, this isn't going to be a friendly chat for them." Good. They didn't waste time. The following evening, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was high-pitched, panicked. "How could you? The police came here. They treated us like criminals." "Maybe because you are?" I said flatly. Dad got on the line, his voice booming through the speaker. "You've humiliated this family. We only did what we had to because you refused to help your brother. You pushed us to do this. If you gave us money in the first place, none of this would have happened." That line made me laugh so hard I had to put the phone down for a second. When I picked it back up, I said, "You know what's funny? You actually believe that. You actually think the logical next step after your son says no is to commit a felony in his name. That's not desperation. That's stupidity. And now you get to explain it to detectives instead of me." Mom started crying. "The ugly kind. We're your parents. How could you betray us like this?" "Betray you? You forged me into debt with criminals. You already betrayed me. I'm just the one who finally put it on paper." I hung up before the conversation could spiral into more gaslighting. A couple days later, the Sharks came back. This time, Scarface was less smug. He cornered me outside my building as I was getting into my car. "You think calling the cops scares us?" he sneered. "Doesn't need to," I shot back. "It scares my parents. And they're the ones you should be talking to, not me." He smirked, but it looked thinner than before. "We don't care about your family tree. Your name's on it, you pay." I pulled out my phone, held it up with the camera running, and said, "Say that again for the nice detective I spoke to." For the first time, he hesitated. Gum Guy pulled him back by the arm. "Let's go. Not worth it." Oh. They left without another word. The next week was chaos for my family. Detectives questioned them. My parents tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, that they believed I would back Eric, but the forged signature killed their story. Eric panicked, ranting on social media about backstabbers in the family. Every post was another piece of evidence for me. Meanwhile, the Sharks weren't dumb. The second they realized I wasn't folding and the cops were sniffing around, they shifted focus. The calls slowed for me, but ramped up for Eric. He even showed up at my door one night, sweaty and pale. "You've got to fix this, man. They're coming after me now." I just stared at him. "Good? They should. It's your debt." He threw his hands up. "We're family." "Exactly. Which is why I'm not paying a dime. You wanted to play businessman? Deal with your investors?" He left cursing, but I didn't care. For once, the fire wasn't under my feet. By the end of that month, the picture was clear. The police were officially investigating my parents for fraud and identity theft. That was just the beginning. The court process would take months to grind forward. Once I contested the forged guarantee, they stopped circling me and went straight to the actual borrower, Eric. And me? I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the guy who'd pulled the plug on decades of manipulation. I wasn't scared anymore. I was pissed. And for the first time in my life, I had leverage. And I'll tell you this, once I had leverage, I wasn't going to waste it. Turns out, I wasn't the only one watching the circus unfold. Word traveled fast through our extended family, and eventually it landed in the lap of one man you did not want on your case, my grandfather. Now, let me explain something about Grandpa. He's not some frail old man in a recliner. He's a retired military officer, the kind of guy who still wakes up at 5 a.m. to do stretches, still folds his clothes sharp enough to cut your finger, and still believes discipline is the cure for every problem. If you ever got the "I'm disappointed in you" look from him, you'd rather be punched in the face. He didn't waste words. And when he called for a family meeting, it wasn't optional. That Sunday, he summoned all of us to his house. No excuses, no delays. If Grandpa called, you showed up. Period. I drove over early, half curious, half ready for a front row seat to what I knew was going to be a bloodbath. Through the window, I could see them sitting stiff in Grandpa's living room, like kids waiting outside the principal's office. Grandpa was standing, arms crossed, looking out the window when I walked in. He gave me a curt nod. Sit. That's all he said. When everyone was finally present, he turned, his voice booming in that way only men from his generation could pull off. I've heard enough about this mess. And now, you're going to hear from me. You could have heard a pin drop. He started with my father. Richard, you were raised better than this. You had a roof over your head, food on the table, and a father who taught you to work for what you have. And yet here you are, enabling your son to act like a leech and dragging your other boy into criminal debt he never agreed to. You've stained this family name with your weakness. Dad opened his mouth, but Grandpa cut him off with a hand. Don't. Speak. You've embarrassed this family enough. Then he turned to Mom. Eleanor, I don't know what fantasy world you live in, but family doesn't mean covering for a parasite while stabbing your hardworking son in the back. You forged his name. You lied to the law. You raised Eric to believe the world owes him something while shaming Kevin for standing on his own 2 feet. You think that's love? That's failure. Mom looked like she'd swallowed glass. She tried the tears act, dabbing her eyes, but Grandpa didn't flinch. Then came Eric. Grandpa walked right up to him and leaned down until they were eye level. You are 28 years old and you still act like a spoiled teenager. You've never worked an honest year in your life, and instead of owning your failure, you let your parents forge your brother into a loan with criminals. Do you understand how disgraceful that is? Do you understand that if you weren't my blood, I'd call you nothing more than a con man? Eric stammered. I just needed a chance. Grandpa slammed his hand on the table so hard everyone jumped. A chance? You've had chance after chance after chance. School, jobs, money, all handed to you. And what did you do with it? You wasted every single one. Meanwhile, your brother built himself up with no help from anyone, and you tried to drag him down for your mistakes. Don't you dare talk about needing a chance. You've had a lifetime of them. Eric shrank back in his chair, red-faced and silent. Grandpa turned back to me then, and his tone softened just slightly. And you. I'm proud of you. You stood your ground. You didn't cave when it got ugly. You showed the strength this family used to stand for. Then he straightened and looked at all of them at once. I'm done pretending. I'm not going to let this rot spread into the future. Effective immediately, I am cutting Richard, Eleanor, and Eric out of my will. Everything that was going to them is going to Kevin. The room went nuclear. Mom gasped like she'd been shot. You can't do that. Dad's face turned beet red. This is outrageous. You're destroying this family. Eric slammed the table. You're picking him over me? After everything? Grandpa didn't blink. Yes, because he earned it. Because he's the only one left who remembers what honor means. You three? You're dead to me until you prove otherwise. And judging by how you've acted, I doubt I'll see that day. The silence that followed was brutal. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mom tried one last guilt trip, voice shaking. We did it for Eric's future. We just wanted him to succeed. Grandpa snapped back. You wanted to baby him into dependency. That's not success. That's cowardice. And you roped an innocent son into your cowardice. Don't insult me by dressing it up as love. Dad tried puffing his chest. You're overreacting. This is still family. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. Family earns respect. Family protects one another. You've done neither. From this day forward, don't come to me for money. Don't come to me for favors. Don't come to me for sympathy. You made your bed. Lie in it. Eric looked like he wanted to scream, but even he knew better than to argue with Grandpa when he was in full command mode. The meeting ended there. No hugs, no fake reconciliations. Just Grandpa's word, final and absolute. As we walked out, Mom whispered at me with venom in her voice. You think you've won? This isn't over. I smirked. It's over when the sharks collect and the cops finish their report. Good luck with that. Walking out of that house, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the outcast in my family. I felt like the one carrying the torch. Not because I wanted it, but because they had all dropped it. And Grandpa? He made sure everyone knew exactly where he stood. After the police report was on record, and while Grandpa was tearing into them at that meeting, everything shifted. For me, it was relief. For them, it was panic. The sharks stopped calling me, stopped showing up at my door. I wasn't their target anymore. The fire moved right where it belonged, straight onto Eric. The first sign came through a voicemail I wasn't supposed to hear. Mom must have butt-dialed me. All I caught was banging on a door, Eric shouting something about Friday, and her gasping in the background. I replayed it once, saved it, and carried on with my day. That wasn't my emergency. Later that night, Eric showed up pounding on my door. His hoodie was half-zipped, his face pale, and a scrape ran across his cheek. "They came to my place," he blurted. "Neighbors saw. They said if I don't pay by Friday, I'll regret it." I crossed my arms. "Guess you better pay by Friday." "I don't have the money." "Not my problem. You wanted to play businessman. This is what business looks like." He gave me this wounded look. "You'd let them ruin me?" "I didn't let anything," I said. "You signed the loan. You dragged me into it. Now you live with it." He tried the brother card. "We're family." "Exactly," I said. "And family doesn't commit fraud on each other. Enjoy your meeting with reality." I shut the door on him before he could beg again. The next few days were a disaster reel for him. First, his car disappeared from the lot. Not stolen. The bank finally repossessed it after he stopped paying the note. He posted online about haters sabotaging him. I screenshotted it for the detective folder. Then came the eviction notice. He sent me a photo of it like I was supposed to gasp. 30 days. I replied with a thumbs up emoji. He sent me paragraphs about how heartless I was. I muted him. Mom and Dad were worse. They called me daily, sometimes together, sometimes separately. "This has gone too far. He's your brother. Do you want blood on your hands? All that melodrama?" My replies were sharp and short. "You forged my name." "We did what we had to do," Mom shot back. "You mean crimes," I replied. "If you helped earlier, none of this would have happened," Dad barked. "You wouldn't have had to if you parented," I wrote back. Then I turned my phone on silent. The Sharks weren't stupid. They didn't waste time with speeches. They cared about one thing: getting paid. Eric tried ducking them for a day. That got him exactly 24 hours of quiet. The next evening, they were waiting outside his building. Not violence, not yet. Just two guys leaning on the rail, asking where Friday's envelope was. Neighbors peeked from behind doors. Eric stuttered promises, said he'd wire it. They let him pass, but one smiled at him like he was already finished. He called me minutes later. "They're everywhere," he panted. "No," I said. "They're exactly where you invited them when you took their cash." "I can't breathe," he muttered. "Then stop running in circles. Go to the detective, or pay them, but stop calling me." The family cracks widened fast. Mom yelled at Eric during a call I picked up by mistake. "You said this was safe. You said they'd be patient." Eric snapped back. "You set it up. You handed them the info. Don't pin this on me." Dad tried to calm them down, but it only made it worse. "Enough finger pointing. We'll get through this." "You forged his name," Mom hissed. "You told me to," Dad shot back. I ended the call. Not my circus anymore. Eric started selling everything not nailed down. Console, gone. Sneakers, gone. TV, gone. Even tried to flip a tablet I gave him years ago as brand new. The buyer messaged me. I told him the real age. That sale died. Eric blew up my phone in all caps. I ignored it. By Saturday, he was back at my door. This time, no pounding. Just a weak knock. I checked the camera. He looked smaller. Same height, no presence. "I set up payments," he muttered when I opened. "Weekly. If I miss one, it doubles." "Sounds familiar," I said. "I can't keep up," he admitted, voice breaking. "I know. You don't even care," he whispered. "You're confusing indifference with boundaries," I said. "I care enough not to be your crash mat anymore." He stared at me, searching for some sign of mercy. There wasn't any. "So that's it? That's it? You want a different ending? Start writing different chapters." He laughed bitterly, wiped his face, and left. 2 days later, Dad texted, "Grandpa only sided with you because you fed him your version." I replied, "Cool. Go tell him yours. Let me know how it goes." 6 hours later, another text. "He told us not to come back." Yeah, that tracks. By the end of the month, the picture was crystal clear. Eric was drowning. No car. Eviction notice taped to his door. Loan sharks keeping him on a leash. My parents were too busy blaming each other to play United Front anymore. And me? For once in my life, I wasn't the punching bag. It wasn't loneliness I felt. It was silence. The kind of silence you don't realize you've been missing until the noise dies down. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. They built the fire. I just stopped standing in it. Eric was already falling apart by then. He vanished from social media. Neighbors whispered about guys showing up at his door, and the eviction notice was taped to his apartment for everyone to see. Mom and Dad were too busy with lawyers to even pretend to shield him. The Sharks wanted their money, and he was out of lifelines. One night, around 11, I heard a weak knock at my door. Not the usual pounding, Just 3 soft taps, like he wasn't sure he even wanted me to answer. I checked the camera and almost didn't recognize him. His face was swollen around one eye, lips split, hoodie pulled tight like he was trying to hide inside of it. He looked like someone who had run out of every excuse. I opened the door a crack. He stood there shaking, clutching his side. "I'm not here for a lecture," he said, voice hoarse. "I just need a little. Enough to get them off my back this week." For the first time in months, I hesitated. Not because I suddenly forgave him or felt brotherly love. It was instinct. Seeing him beat down like that stirred something. The smallest flicker of what if. But then I remembered the forged signature, the court filings, the endless calls. "How much?" I asked flatly. "Couple hundred, just to make one payment. I swear I'll figure out the rest." I stared at him for a long moment, weighing it. Finally, I grabbed my wallet, peeled off a few bills, and shoved them into his hand. It wasn't a bailout. It wasn't mercy. It was a transaction. The price for peace. "Take this," I told him, "and understand something. This is the last time you ever stand at my door. You contact me again, for anything, and I'll hand every text, call, and voicemail to the cops without hesitation. We're done." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words never came. He just nodded, stuffed the bills into his pocket, and walked off down the hall, shoulders slumped. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel proud either. I just felt finished. Months later, Mom and Dad didn't fare better. The court case against them finally rolled forward. The forged documents and text messages were enough to strip away their excuses. They stood in front of a judge and heard words like criminal fraud and identity theft read into the record. I didn't even bother showing up to watch. It wasn't my show anymore. Grandpa, true to his word, finalized the will. He called me in after it was signed, looked me in the eye, and said, "You were the only one who stood tall. The rest of them stained the family name." Hearing that from him, a man who spent his whole life living by honor and rules, carried more weight than anything my parents ever said to me. That was the moment it all clicked. I wasn't the black sheep. I wasn't the selfish one. I was the only one who saw the cycle for what it was and had the guts to step out of it. Eric never called again. Mom and Dad disappeared into their legal mess. And me? I finally had silence. No more guilt trips, no more fake emergencies, no more being treated like an ATM. Just peace. And if you asked me whether I regret handing Eric that little bit of cash, the answer's no. It bought me closure. It bought me the right to say I gave him one last chance, and he wasted it. Families like mine don't implode overnight. They rot slowly until someone cuts the cord. That someone was me. And the silence that followed was the loudest victory I've ever had.